Good evening. Today in interlude session, we have Dr. Deena Brown from California. We'll be discussing more on how do we adapt to the future and what are the appropriate actions to be taken in order to equip ourselves for the future. Over to you, Dr. Deena.
Hi, thank you for having me today. And this is a great topic to speak to now, especially when we're talking about so much uncertainty in the future. And so the first part of that question is we talk about what do we begin to do? How do we begin to look forward? And so I want to share with you that in this season, what you should be looking at, not only of future proofing your business, your life, and your relationships, you should be looking at future resilience. What do I mean by that? Well, in future proofing, of course, you're taking the necessary actions and steps in order to make sure that you are around later. So, do you have the systems in place? Do you have appropriate operational structures? Do you have the right people on your team? Are you investing your time, energy, and effort, and more importantly, your money in the greatest places possible to make sure that you are around for the future that you desire? So that's part A. But part B of that is really about the resilience. So not only future proofing and thinking about how you're going to, or what you actually have on your team, but how are you going to make sure that that's sustainable? How are you going to make sure that the people on your team are going to be able to stay on your team and that they're fully equipped to serve, to operate, and to do what's necessary? So again, that you have the longevity that you actually desire. And so once we begin to look at the first part of that is how do I begin to future proof my existence? And when I say my existence, because you as an individual, you as a person are part of that. And then when you take a look at your environment, your ecosystem that you've built around you, how are you going to make sure that that environment is sustainable as well? And now we're going to talk more and spend a little bit more time going into how to do that. What are the steps that you actually begin to do? And one thing that I share on a consistent basis is the fact that in order to ensure that you can live the life that you dream and live your life by design and not by default, is that you have three things. You have clarity, you have confidence, and you have consistency. That is the foundation of building the future of your dreams. So what does clarity mean? Clarity is who are you right now? What do you want to do? What should you be doing? And how does it add value or empower others? So when you're clear about that and what your particular role is, and what I mean by your role in it is as a leader, sometimes you're not leading from the front, you're leading from the middle. Or you might be stepping back and letting other leaders lead because you've empowered them. So clarity of knowing your role in that season of uncertainty, in this season of uncertainty, because I'll tell you right now, this global pandemic and the economic repercussions that we're also experiencing has many people in the loop, and they're wondering what's in it for me. But here's the secret of that in future-proofing your life and your business. It's not just what's in it for you. It's really how does this connect? What is the interconnectivity to others? And so you have to be clear about what your role is and what your role will be in the solution. So once you're clear about that, the next thing is that you can actually begin to speak confidently. You can actually be able to take confident actions. You can actually begin to say, wow, I know exactly who I am. We're getting a lot of feedback, so I don't know where that's coming from. You see, this is really good stuff. So all that extra feedback that's coming in during that time, it knows. It's just saying, hey, you're right on target. And so the fact is that when you're confident, because you're very clear, it allows you now to build consistency into your model. And when I say consistency into your model, I actually mean that you know what you're doing and you're confident in your abilities. You've equipped yourself, you've equipped your team, all of those things to make sure that you're going to do it properly. And now you show up. You show up each and every day. And you don't just actually take the season, but you really make it about the moments. And now, how do you do that? That's one of the biggest questions that I get a lot is that how do I get there? How do I begin to build clarity in my life and my business? How do I build the confidence that I actually need? How do I begin to be consistent? Well, that's part of my proprietary shift factor that I talk about, with self-awareness being the first one. So when we're talking about resilience, so we're talking about future proofing, but I am challenging you to move forward into future resilience. In order for you to be future resilient, you have to be self aware. You have to be self aware. Is that what do you have in your toolkit, in your toolbox right now to make a move? What do you have? What does your team have? So let's say that you run a business, and I'll ask you this. How many of you have had a business that have been impacted, whether positively or negatively, through the global COVID pandemic? If you can answer yes to that, and I think that we all probably can, whether it's positively or negatively, then when we're now looking at what do we do next? Well, guess what you have to do first? You've got to take inventory. So the very first thing that you need to do is to take inventory. What are your pluses? What do you have that's working really well? And what are your deltas? Where's your opportunity to change? Where's your opportunity to shift? Where's your opportunity to improve? And once you take inventory on that, now you can, because see, that's the clarity part, right? And so now you can say, wow, I got this. I know what we're supposed to do. I'm pretty much clear on the areas or the gaps that I have. And now the next thing that I can begin to do is to look at how can I innovate? That's the second I, is innovation. So you're going to take inventory, and then your step two is going to be about innovation. How am I going to innovate? How am I going to create something out of what I've had? Create something new. And so the future doesn't belong to the person that's flexible or the person who's able to change. The future belongs to the creative. What can you create out of what you have? And in order to do that, you're going to come to the conclusion you cannot do it alone. And that's the H in the shift factor. That's the humility. You don't have all of it to do by yourself, nor were you intended to do that. And so now that you're self-aware, you're clear, you've identified your areas. The second piece of that, and you've humbled yourself to realize that I'm not here to do this by myself. You now have the opportunity to innovate. And in order for you to innovate, guess what you're going to have to do first? Innervate. You're going to have to look inside yourself, again, to look at what your role is. How are you supposed to be? What's your value add to that team? So you've identified, you've taken inventory. You've now realized that, oh, I can innovate. The next I, you've identified your next action steps. And now you can be intentional about what to do to future-proof your life, future-proof your business, okay? So we're now super self-aware. We're humble enough. We're intentional because why? We have actually taken inventory, right? We've decided that we do need to innovate. And now we've identified the next steps we need to take to innovate. And now we can focus. We can focus on what's the next step. What is the one thing that's going to lead to the next one thing? That's going to lead to the next one thing that leads to the thing that we're supposed to do right now to guarantee that not only are we here tomorrow, but that we're fully equipped to, again, to continue to evolve into the greatest next version of ourselves. So if you think that, wow, that seems like a lot, one of the products, and this is not a product endorsement, this is an example. Whenever you get the latest iPhone, and when they first release the iPhone, they know that it has bugs in it. They know that there has kinks in it. And once they release it, they know that they're going to get a lot of feedback on what's not right. Have you ever wondered that before the first iteration comes out, within months, they have an iOS upgrade, they have the next version, they have the XL model, they have the next model, because they've taken all that feedback And now they're able to focus on the areas that need improvement. And they do want to do, then they now release. Okay. They release. And they're tenacious about it, which is really the key. They don't stop with the fact that, wow, we've made mistakes in this product. This is not really how I planned it to go. And, there's a few other pieces to that. What they do is say, okay, we went ahead, we identified those areas, right? We've innovated, and now we've begun to be very intentional in the sense, and we've focused down. We were able to the next implement the changes, implement the ideas. We were able to focus on the areas that were what we may call like deficient, but I love to call the areas of opportunity. And when you have those areas of opportunity, guess what? It allows you to always level up, but you have to receive. So in everything, for you to make the shift, that future shift, you're going to have to really get very clear about your I am story, is what I like to say, and what role do you play in the innovation of the next greatest version of yourself. And if you are doing this in business, the same concept, the same model, the same structure works. It works. This is universal law. And over that period of time, you're not only going to future-proof your life, you're not only going to future-proof your business, but you're going to become extremely resilient. And so the next time you're met with uncertainty, you see the uncertainty as an opportunity. And that if once we begin to realize that when things don't go as planned, there's an opportunity for us to implement something greater. It is not a sign that we are incapable. It means that we're fully equipped and we're ready to evolve to the next greatest version of ourselves. And that's that power, like I was sharing with creating a future shift to that. So foundationally for me is that, how do I apply this to my life? How do I apply this to my business? And recently I did a virtual summit. It was called Futurecast. And the reason why I did Futurecast was because I realized that individually, we may work in companies or corporations, and we may sit these opportunities that are there, and we'll say to ourselves that I will do this for others, but rarely do we do it for ourselves. And so we don't take those necessary steps to be able to go 1, go 2, go 3, go 4, in order to get to that next version of that. And this applies not only to ourselves, because the one way that we do one thing is the way that we do everything. So what I encourage you to do is to actually begin to look first internally, to know that you have to innovate, right? So that you can innovate on the outside. And you then need to begin to apply very systemic systems to the execution of this idea, of this concept. So that number one, I want to go really quickly through the I's. And the reason why I used I's, let me give you a little bit of secret, is that I want you to see the I in this. I want you, when you say I am, that you are implementing from a very personal space, a very passionate space, and a very purposeful place. And if you can do that, you're going to see the I in the team. So let's kind of talk about really quick as we begin to bring up the close of this powerful, quick talk. So the very first one is we have to take inventory. The inventory is so key. The inventory really sets the roadmap for the journey of our future and laying the foundation of to where we're growing to. And that's personally or professionally and even spiritually, okay? You've got to take inventory. What are you great at? What do you have that's really working? What are some areas of opportunity that you actually might need to modify? That's number one. Number two You then, after you've identified that, you've taken that inventory, you're now ready to innovate. How can I level up? Ask yourself this question. How can I level up? What must I do today to be the greatest version of myself tomorrow? Because the only reality is the conscious now, but it doesn't mean that we can't lay a foundation for a very purposeful future. So when you sit there and you say, okay, I've identified this area, so I'm ready to do that. I now can innovate, okay? And once you've gone through those other steps and you're sitting there like, now I've identified the steps. I now have the steps. Right? I know that it sounds so simple, but it's so hard. So you have to be very intentional about that. That's another I for you. You've got to be intentional about that journey. And so now that you're intentional about the journey, you're now to move to the purpose and the opportunity to begin to implement. And that's part of the shift factor. And that's how you can create future shifts in your life and your business.
Thank you so much, because most of the areas which you have touched are key areas which is much required now for people to understand and to embrace. And the areas which you touched, both on personal level and in professional level, people will be able to uh, take it, apply it, and see positive results which they would definitely desire to see. This kind of tiny pots of sessions where you give them tips for their personal life and professional life, which will help them to be more successful, will help them. Because see, this Tuesday we are talking on this topic, and then following Tuesday you'll be giving another tip. So they have 7 days in between for them to understand it, imbibe it, and then see how the result has come. In fact, this will help them in a longer run when they keep getting tips on the regular basis as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Deena. There are many areas which are much required, but then hitting on the key points which will help them to understand life better is actually will help them to also get the picture that this kind of uh, it might be like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but then the areas which you have touched will help them in long run. And this is not just a sprint, 100 meters, this is a marathon. And this will help them much more in ways which they could not even imagine. Thank you so much. And about the leadership movement, can you give a couple of sentences on that area so that people who are interested, our viewers, would be able to support you or be part of it in long run?
Absolutely. The leadership movement is simply, and when I say simply, I meant in the most powerful form of the word, is to help shift your mindset to elevate the way we lead. So to shift the way we think as women so that we can elevate the way that we lead. And by lead, I mean learn, experience, apply, and develop. I'm a strategist that helps women who want more. And what that more is, you get to define that. And the only way to get to defining that is to peel back the layers and to begin again to identify who are you right now in this season, your terms, your authentic self, not the script or the narrative somebody else gave you. And that's what the leadership movement actually does. It helps you move from where you are to where you want to be. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I've been seeing your updates and posts about featuring different person, and then the poster has a wonderful set of speakers from different parts of the world, and each one with a different focus. I wish you all success in that journey, and also I'll be happy to welcome you next week, same time, 8:30 your time, 9 o'clock my time here, 8:30 a.m. for you, 9 p.m. here in India. And next Tuesday we'll meet you again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.